name is Irene Willis Hassan, and I'm the Minister for Refugee and Migration Services on Team Global Hope at the United Church of Christ National Ministries.
My name is Reverend Dr. Sharon Stanley Ray. It's been my incredible joy to be able to work with Disciples, Refugee and Immigration Ministries as our director.
So my name is Natalie Teague, and I'm Disciples Immigration Legal Counsel. I am an immigration attorney licensed in the state of North Carolina, but can provide immigration services across all 50 states here in the U.S.
Right now, we're in the middle of a global migration crisis in which there are lots of different kinds of people moving across the globe for a variety of reasons under a variety of contexts. So there are lots of different ways to help. You are needed and you are valued as communities, as church people, as people of faith to work with refugee services to help our vulnerable populations and our neighbors.
Resettlement and assistance in being a sponsor is the key way that we want to invite congregations, and I'm talking about everywhere around the country, to engage. There are, at this point, 280 different resettlement offices in 150 of the states that are around the U.S. that are ready to assist in resettlement. It used to be State Department requirements that a congregation needed to live within 50-mile radius. Then that was relaxed to a 100-mile radius earlier in the fall. And at this point, the U.S. State Department has given permission, however, for congregations wherever they are located to help with sponsoring refugees.
However, making sure that you have an adequate plan that can help you move forward equitably and helpfully and efficiently is going to be key to working with refugee offices. We're in the middle of the largest refugee crisis that the United States has seen since Vietnam, or even perhaps before, which is causing a shift in the way that refugee services work. Refugee services did not have the capacity to respond with equity, which is creating a bit of an issue in professional services for being able to meet needs as they come in. And this is where communities and churches can do a lot to support. Because refugee services tends to not have the full capacity that they normally would, if you were to approach refugee services right now, they may not even have the capacity to work with you as a volunteer. Many refugee offices are currently overwhelmed with volunteer applications. For example, I spoke with one refugee office and they've received 5,000 volunteer applications in 1 month. So once a refugee or a person that is discerning the fact that they have to leave where they are because their life is directly in danger, they often go to a neighboring country, one right next door. The UNHCR will have camps set up in those neighboring countries because it's understood that the country of origin is at war and there's a refugee crisis happening. So these folks will go into the neighboring country and usually stay at that refugee camp for up to 2 years. And during that 2 years, it's very difficult for them. They live in tents. They're in close proximity to their neighbors, which exposes people to all sorts of things from robbery to disease. There's lots of trauma going on, not much access to schools or clean water. It's a very difficult lifestyle. And while they are being processed in these camps, it's determined which country they will eventually go to. If they have something called a U.S. tie, which means a friend or a family member that's in the United States, then that is when they are processed to become refugees in the United States. And during that processing, they are vetted to make sure they don't have ties to terrorism. They have extensive background checks done and multiple interviews. And then after that 2 years of interviews and processing, they receive all of their documentation to be able to resettle in the host country of the United States. So once they get into the United States, they are resettled by a resettlement agency that is in the same neighborhood as where their U.S. tie is. Refugees are also resettled according to nationality and community. For example, there's a huge Somali community in Minnesota. There's a huge Afghan community in Sacramento, and so forth. The United States, when resettling refugees, always make sure they have someone in the United States that they know before they're chosen for the United States as being their host country. And they tend to resettle them all together in the same community so that it isn't as much of a shock to them when they are resettled. And so they do have some cultural familiarity in the place that they go. So once that person arrives in the United States, they're greeted at the airport by a refugee office, usually with the church as well. Churches do a great job greeting folks at the airport and bringing them home. You could bring signs to the airport that are written in that person's native language that welcomes them and demonstrates that they are valued and loved as part of the community, and then transport them to their home. And the home is found by refugee services just using the same search engine that you and I do when we go looking for apartments. So Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, or usually a refugee office has relationships with certain landlords. You do have housing in a major city or know of housing. That is a huge resource no matter what population you're serving. Housing that would be welcoming and open to resettling refugees in their homes. So once they are in that house, then they are connected with what's called TANF and RCA. TANF is an eligibility for any person in a vulnerable position. It means temporary assistance for needy families. So that can be given as cash assistance for up to 5 years for families who have children. The other cash assistance they get is called RCA, which is refugee cash assistance, which they're only eligible for 6 months, but it's just to get them started. So they are resettled in this apartment. They pay for the apartment using TANF and RCA. And if RCA and TANF, which are not that big of allowances, don't cover the cost of rent, then it becomes a problem. Also, refugee offices do take donations from donors such as churches in order to cover the initial cost of living for a refugee, since there is no other funding other than the TANF and RCA. And TANF and RCA might be a small several $100 amount when rent in a major US city is often closer to $1,500. And so the expectation that a refugee gets a job, it's a very scary place for them to be, especially since they're expected to get a job so quickly. Think about the first job you ever got in interviewing for that job. It was probably in your native language, in your native culture, in the town you grew up in, and it was still scary. Imagine that you're doing a job interview in a foreign language, in a foreign culture, for a job that you know that you have to go to every day, that you aren't confident that you even want to do after you've been through so much. This is one of the most crucial places that churches and community members can step in to help, is to build the confidence, to build the empowerment that refugees can do it, that they can find jobs, they can learn how to integrate, and that this is their best resource for doing so. Jobs traditionally are ways that people meet each other, ways that they learn English most efficiently, and ways that they find out more about their community. There's lots of benefits to refugees getting jobs besides just paying their rent. It is research proven the best way for them to integrate into the community. However, as I mentioned, it's very scary. So one of the biggest ways that churches can help refugee offices and refugees is to help them build confidence that them getting a job matters and that they can do it. For example, if Jacob comes over from Ethiopia and he was a doctor in Ethiopia, his doctor's license is not going to work in the United States. So he's going to be disappointed by that. He's going to be disappointed by the expectation that he has to go get a job as a janitor, and he has to do so within a month, otherwise he'll be homeless. So being able to walk with Jacob while he processes that, help him figure out how he can get relicensed as a doctor, and being able to research best ways to get into that field again are huge ways that churches can help. Or providing a matching grant for Jacob or others like Jacob to incentivize him to take that initial job. For example, we had a program at the refugee office I worked for called Microenterprise. Lots of refugee offices have microenterprise programs. And that idea is that if they take the job as the security guard or the janitor or the warehouse worker or the hotel worker, and they stick with that job for 6 months and save some money, the refugee office will use donated funding to match them with a grant so that they can start their own business or go back to college. And these are ways that we incentivize refugees to know that getting this crummy job that they don't want is going to be the most powerful and impactful way to move forward with integrating into the United States. I cannot emphasize enough about how much job training, how much vocational training, how much occupational therapy and resources like that are major needs for refugee offices that churches and community members can definitely help with, no matter what kind of refugee it is. Refugees also need services such as enrolling children in schools or learning cultural values, such as knowing what a crosswalk is, or knowing what this piece of mail I got is that says I won $10,000, which we all know is not true. The refugee doesn't know that. And there's just a myriad of things that refugees need when they arrive in the United States. Typically, the refugee office technically sponsors all those things, but at a minimum capacity. And being able to help with any one of those things, from enrolling kids in schools to English training to job training to navigating public transportation, are all ways that you can definitely help a refugee integrate successfully into the United States. Or if you just want to do things like host community dinners at your church, in which you allow a safe space for them to process, interfaith dinners in which you welcome them into their community and you cook a meal together. These are valuable things that churches can do as well, no matter the type of formal refugee.
It's such a joy to know that Disciples have invested in the importance of offering the kind of legal counsel that Natalie offers. It is a gift that Disciples likewise continue to invest some of our work time in focusing on how we as communities of faith, and specifically as Disciples, can bring our unique faith voices and values to legislation in ways that offer improvement to people's lives, and in ways that we believe fulfill Scripture's call to care for the vulnerable, to offer hope, and to help make sure that every individual's life really can sense a vision and promise ahead. We all, as we have been working so hard as Disciples collectively in recent years, as we've seen the U.S. refugee resettlement program continue to shrink, we are now in the process of seeking to rebuild that program. The need for the program is accented even more by the Afghan arrivals, but not only do we need to be offering the life-saving services of refugee resettlement to Afghans, there are many other African populations and others, that Syrian, that continue to be at risk. And so we need to continue to support legislation that is restoring the U.S. refugee program. Our office, through Disciples Refugee and Immigration Ministries, lifts up alerts consistently. We partner together with key ecumenical colleagues through Church World Service and other organizations to support their asks. And we're grateful as Disciples Refugee and Immigration Ministries also to partner with global ministries in the kind of supportive asks for legislation that we know can make a difference, not just for individuals in this country, but also internationally. And we do that, of course, not only around refugee concerns, but around asylum concerns. And just to, I really want to lift up that many of the populations of our congregation's leaders, who may be Haitian or Montagnard or Liberian, our connections and our support for our Disciples family of many different immigrant communities calls and compels us to also support legislation and advocacy that strengthens the lives of their communities.
Immigration attorneys can only work through what is legally available, right? There is really a huge need for advocacy around even just the bigger immigration system and its capacity and changing our laws so that they are updated and reflect the current needs that we have. You can kind of add it to your daily to-do list of something that being engaged in advocacy to step out and be the voice for those who don't have a voice in our system is enormously huge and helpful.
I would like to highlight some of the concerns that we're hearing in particular through our Haitian disciples leaders. And I have seen incredible models for advocacy, and the invitation is very open for all of us to join in advocacy efforts with Haitian brothers and sisters in partnership with those Haitian pastors and with advocates all around the country. The policy, especially of Title 42 and the migrant protection protocols that were implemented in the case of Title 42 during the pandemic, and migrant protection protocols just a bit before the time of the beginning of the pandemic. We know that these are policies that are continuing to not allow Haitians or other migrants to be able to be in safe locations and to claim their right to seek asylum. And so we urge you, we've got prayer toolkits for vigils that we hope you might have in partnership with those who are in our disciples' families who are asking us to join. We have national advocacy efforts to end Title 42 and to make sure that individuals are able to again find due process through a route to asylum. And even we're seeing an ongoing barrage of deportation flights for any Haitians who were able to cross and get into the US. We have had dozens and dozens of deportation flights this fall. In fact, at one point, it was 89 deportation flights within the same number of days, starting on September 19th of this fall. So we really pray that we can join collectively in supporting our Haitian brothers and sisters in ending Title 42 and restoring asylum protections, and in ensuring that our policies, our international policies with Haiti, are ones that are just, that support true democracy and a functioning government, and do not continue to perpetuate conditions that are then leading to push more to have to depart their home country.